Hey guys, welcome to Cooking with Chase. Hope everyone's having a great Saturday. Kind of a bonus weekend edition here. Today we are making two dishes. So we're going to be making refried beans and some coleslaw. It's kind of a really beautiful summer day here. I think people are starting to get the barbecues out. I know it's warmed up on the west side of the country there. People are starting to cook there. So I thought we'd talk about a couple side dishes you guys could do for barbecue if you're cooking outside for some family and friends. So grab a drink, let's get cooking. Cheers everyone. So this should also be our last Instagram live cooking lesson, and on Monday we will be moving to YouTube if everything goes well. So again, if you haven't, go subscribe to the YouTube channel, Cooking with Chase, just so you get those updates and you can continue to follow along on the adventure here. Okay, let's dive into it. So I made these refried beans and I briefly talked about them for the burrito episode, but we're going to kind of go over it again in a bit more detail here. So, what are refried beans? Well, it's a Spanish dish, and I was doing some research because I realized today, I was like, why are they called refried beans? You only fry them once, and apparently it's all just a mistranslation of the Spanish term for what these beans are, which means well fried, which is a refrigiole. And I guess just when it came to the English people heard refrigiole, and is that refried? And that's the whole story. I thought it'd be a little bit more interesting than that, but it is unfortunately not. So it's a pretty simple thing. You've got beans, and traditionally in Mexico they're cooked in lard. So we're going to render down some bacon fat here, and to kind of mimic that, also that adds a really nice smoky element. If you don't have bacon or you're vegetarian, this can be done in olive oil, you can do it in butter, any type of fat really. So we're going to get the bacon rendering out here. I'm going to add a decent amount of olive oil to help that process get started. So this is 3 strips of bacon that we're going to get going in there. Kind of medium-low, medium-ish heat. I'm not going to add any salt right now because the bacon is secured. There's already quite a bit of salt in there. But I'm just going to mix this up to break apart the little lardons, the little pieces of bacon. Because our goal here is to extract as much fat out of this bacon as possible. And then the bacon doesn't go in the beans. We're going to reserve that aside and use that in Caesar salads, whatever we want to do there. So that's going to get rendering kind of in the background, just kind of crisping up over there. While that's working over there, we're going to go on coleslaw, which I think Kim requested. So we're going to bang out some coleslaw as well over here. So coleslaw again is like one of those things where there's a million ways to make it. This is a way I like to do it. But into this you can add or subtract everything except for the cabbage, because that's no longer coleslaw. So you can use purple cabbage, green cabbage, whatever. We've got these beeswax things that my mother got us, by the way. No?
Laurel.
Yeah, Laurel. Laurel got us. That are awesome. Great way to kind of save a little bit on some saran wrap or plastic bags. Especially for stuff that like cabbage that will last. It's really hardy and lasts in the fridge. So Laurel, thanks. We use it all the time. I just mentioned that because you're probably wondering what the heck that thing was. You can use green cabbage, you can use red cabbage. Napa cabbage you could use, but it won't last as long. This stuff's really hardy. It will hold for a couple days, probably 3 days in the fridge. The Napa cabbage are kind of like, you make it, you serve it, and then it will just kind of basically turns into kimchi almost. So all I'm going to do here is very delicately with that bowl with their mandolin on it. I'm just cutting the core out. Take a knife. So I've divided this cabbage into 4 pieces. I just took out most of the really hard core here. Just right there. Kind of into something like that. Discard that. And then we're going to take our trusty old mandolin here. And we are just going to shred up this cabbage in a large bowl. And I like to go fairly thin with this. If you're making this like ahead of time, you can make this a little thicker. Just because it will be a bit harder, but that to me is great. That's a nice kind of consistency there. And this is where these mandolins are so useful, right? It's just like, you could cut this, I could cut this by hand, and I could do it, but I'm not cutting it this fast, you know? And most cooks I know couldn't, and they couldn't do it this consistently either, right? I'm just not going to talk for a second so I concentrate and don't gash myself in front of our dozens and dozens of viewers. And that's kind of where I would stop. I don't really want to go any further than that. But I'm certainly going to use that cabbage. Just going to go old school with this, right? Just kind of take it down. Then you sew it with your knife. And if there's a piece like this, like that's all cabbage, I just discard that. It's just so thick. It's also from that outer leaf. And then these little bits, just like cut them up small. They'll disappear in the coleslaw. You know, they'll kind of mix in and be good. So, there we go. Awesome. Okay. So we've got a big bowl of cabbage here, all shredded up nicely. Thanks to our mandolin. The first thing we want to do is salt it. And I think this is the only trick to coleslaw that I can really think of. Is you want to get fairly generous with the salt. I'm probably adding a good like tablespoon and a half, maybe, of like kosher salt. So this if you have finer salt at home, like the size of your flakes. I've talked about salt before, but like you can see how big these flakes are. If you take a tablespoon of fine table salt, it's like 4 tablespoons of this salt. Like that's how vast the difference is. So until you get to know like what you have at home, you gotta that's kind of gonna determine how much salt you're adding, right? So those tablespoon measurements you see in recipes, don't trust them because they could be using a different salt than you have at home, unless it's by weight, right? And you have a kitchen scale. Okay, so Ty, come in here. So you saw that this bowl was about there, full. It was almost full. So I've just been massaging this a little bit, right? And that salt, starting to see a little bit of wetness at the bottom of the bowl. We're going to leave this for about 5 minutes. And you can see how much liquid comes out of this. Now, the reason why I salted it so much is I'm trying to extract some of the liquid out of the cabbage. And that liquid is what gives it that like kind of farty cabbage taste. Same as like cauliflower and broccoli. It's like that vegetal thing. It all lives in the cells, right? So I'm breaking the cells down. You can see how much smaller that's gotten already, right? Like it's lost about half its volume. The coleslaw started to get, I've added no liquid. That's just salt extract that's coming out, right? I'm just massaging it and bruising it. I'm just doing this for a couple minutes. Then we're going to put this aside and leave it. Just for a few minutes. So that's going to extract out some of that liquid. We're going to drain that liquid off. And that's what's going to help give our cabbage a really satisfying like crunch. And then from there, you can add bell peppers, whatever you want. I'll tell you what I add to mine, which is not a lot. I'm a pretty simple fella when it comes to that. So, yeah. Okay. We're going to take a look at our bacon here. This is kind of what we want, right? We're starting to render off some of this fat, which is really, really nice. Mixing it with olive oil. If nothing's happening super quickly. You know, I might turn this up a little bit because I want to get this done in half an hour for you guys. But this is nice. You just want to use, the slower you go, the more fat you're going to be rendering out of that bacon. So, yeah. Okay, beans. I know I'm jumping over. I've never done like kind of 2 recipes at once. New thing. Cool. So traditionally pinto beans are used, or I used red kidney beans when I did it, and I love them. I think that's my go-to bean now. Well, I say that. I haven't actually tried white beans yet. But we're going to try white beans today for our refried beans. A lot of recipes say add this liquid, right? But it's like full of starch and kind of, I don't know. I'm sure it's fine, but like if you look at the bottom of that, kind of, can you see that? See how the gunk? Like that's what's kind of all throughout that liquid. So I'm going to go ahead and rinse that off. Because I like my refried beef to be like a little cleaner on the palate. And this will help with that a lot. So you don't have to go crazy, right? Just enough that the water kind of runs clear, and you can feel it more than see it, especially with white beans. When that water runs off, if it doesn't feel sticky or tacky to your hand, you probably rinsed most of that off. So that's perfect. And we'll wipe there, grab a bowl ski. Kidney beans in there. So I'm going to use this strainer to siphon off our bacon when we get down to it there. Yeah, there we go. It's great. So this is one of those dishes where like the smokiness is really what I'm looking for more than like the meat element. Like I don't want this to be like bacon beans. Not baked beans. I mean like bacon and beans. I just want that like mouth coating animal fat you get from like bacon fat or beef fat, and then that smoked element. If you were doing a vegetarian option, I've got paprika. I would highly recommend going in and getting some smoked paprika or some chipotle. Something to give some smokiness to the refried beans. If you're going to use olive oil instead of like bacon fat, because you really want that smokiness, it adds quite a bit. Okay, so jumping back to our cabbage here. So you can see like, see all that liquid that's coming out of there? Right? So, if we were making sauerkraut, I spilled some. Guys, first time ever on the show, I spilled something. So if we were making sauerkraut, I would just press this down, and put it in a jar, and then kind of work it until enough liquid came out to cover it, and then put it in the fridge and you have sauerkraut. That's all it is. It's salted cabbage. So we're not going to make sauerkraut. What we're going to do is we're going to grab a different bowl. And I normally, if I'm being honest, I do this all in the same bowl. And I just kind of like squeeze out some of the liquid over the sink. So it'll be a little bit more professional. And just make sure to spill some more for you guys. We're just going to kind of squeeze out some of this liquid. Okay, so in 4 minutes, we've probably got a quarter cup of like very salty, very cabbagey, very weird tasting water. Ugh. Ugh. You gotta taste it, but sometimes, man, I wish you didn't have to. Okay, so we've got our cabbage here, and this at this point, like, really crunchy, salty, right? But the salt is right in it. It's not like coated in salt. It's almost like this really quick sauerkraut. Super cool. So we're not going to add any more salt to this because it's seasoned all the way through now. So now we're going to add our other elements. That's risky. Our other elements for our coleslaw. So you can use white onions or red or whatever. I've got lots of green onions. So I'm just going to add those. And I like that in like a summertime too. It's a little fresh. So just kind of give these a nice little chop chop. Nothing crazy. Go big, go small, whatever you like. You can see the color change too. See, it kind of got a little translucent. It almost looks like we've steamed it. Yeah, cook it with salt, guys. And this basically also is like, if you had added some kimchi and some like chilies and stuff, or sorry, some fish sauce and some like chili paste, and then stuck it in a jar, basically it's kimchi. Yeah. So this salt and cabbage is worldwide and delicious. Okay, I got some fresh parsley. This is that parsley from like 10 days ago that I picked. Finally used it all. And it's still good, right? So, say it again, you know, we don't need to be living, we don't need to be missing our fresh herbs during this pandemic-y time. Okay, so you can see the bacon's really starting to get crisp here, right? It's looking good. I'm going to keep going a little longer, finish up this coleslaw. Okay, chop up some of this parsley. And again, we're just going to roughly chop it up, nothing fancy. Kind of roll it up into a ball. Run the old knife through it. Yeah, and if you wanted to add some like a little spice, slice up this jalapeno nice and thin. Fantastic. Some cilantro in there. Great. Very well. Yeah. Okay. Mayo. I don't do it heavy. I'm not like a big like, creamy coleslaw guy. But that little bit of fat certainly helps. Gonna add, so I'm gonna go kind of not bad. Tablespoon. Actually, not much. And then vinegar. So you can use cider vinegar, white vinegar, whatever you want. I like white wine vinegar. It's just a little bit more delicate. And again, I'm adding like that amount, which is kind of probably 2 tablespoons is a rough area. But I like my things really acidic. You know, I like that brightness. If you don't like this as acid, cut it back. If you want more acid, throw a little bit more on. Some pepper. Decent amount of pepper. And a touch of olive oil. And adding the olive oil, I know so you're adding fat from the mayo and olive oil. Like, well, they're kind of 2 fats. Like, why are you doing? There's a difference between an emulsified fat and a non-emulsified fat in terms of how things are coated. Which, if we want to get really nerdy about, we can, but whatever. So you can see how much cabbage we started with, right? And you'll see some liquid at the bottom, but that's kind of the sign for me that like that squeezing out is, a lot of times you get coleslaw and if you do this, the whole bottom of the bowl is all flooded. This is because we've extracted at least some of that liquid. It really helps in terms of keeping this as like, you know, just a nice crispy, not wet slaw. And give her a little taste. Really good. I don't cook with white sugar a lot. In this case, there's a time and a place. I think this recipe, it needs it. You know, not a lot. About maybe a teaspoon and a half. But sugar's also a preservative, right? So the salt and sugar are ways things are preserved, and way things that it affects moisture in vegetables and fermentation, all that kind of crazy stuff, right? So I think for this kind of application, when you're making a coleslaw like this, a little white sugar is useful. You can admit it, but it's worth it in this recipe. Okay, so that's my coleslaw, right? Again, one of those things, kind of 4 ingredients, like three or 4 ingredients, right? You got cabbage, green onions, parsley. There's no garlic, there's no onion in this. Nothing like that. Okay, here. But it's that application of technique, right? It's that salting, letting it sit for a couple minutes, working it with your hands, massaging down, breaking down the cell structure. And then squeezing that liquid out. Remember how much liquid we squeezed out of that? Like, that's what kind of takes this to, like, oh, if you just looked at the ingredient list and didn't know what the technique was, you'll never replicate this, right? But if you know that technique, you can switch out the ingredient list. You could add peppers. You could mandolin Brussels sprouts into this. If you like garlic, fire some garlic in there, If you've got garlic mayo in the fridge, use garlic mayo as a dressing. Which I realized we have garlic mayo in the fridge. And I should have used it instead of the regular mayo, because it would have been better. But I forgot. So there. Okay, coleslaw. Beautiful. Put this off to the side there. Actually, put this in the fridge. Much more reasonable place for this to go. Alright, and our bacon. Woo, settle down, Bessie. You watch out there. She's spatting her. I'm really happy with this. When you see those bubbles, that's how you know the bacon is starting to cook, right? The bubbles are getting really small. That's just mayo sitting there. Unreasonable. To the fridge it goes. So the bacon itself, the actual protein, is starting to cook. So here we go. I'm going to grab a bowl. I'm going to drain the fat into this pot. And then this fat's going... Oh my God. Oh, fat going right back in there. What are you doing? Disembodied camera person's arm is coming out of nowhere for left field, taking my pots. Tyler, stop trying to steal my pot. Okay, then our fat's going right back in there. And now we're going to start our beans here. So, that's a lot of fat, guys. This is one of those things where maybe you don't want to see how the sausage is made. If you really enjoy refried beans and you thought they were really healthy for you, turn this video off. Walk away. Live your life in blessed ignorance of what refried beans are. But this is that good. So we are leaving all that fat in there. Okay, so we are nipping off our garlic. I use 2 garlic cloves. Smoosh. Smooshy. Take that skin off. Just that whole garlic in there. Because we're going to run this through a hand blender. So we're now just going to let that kind of go. Let that get happy in there. Almost kind of comfy. While that's working, we'll take a little minute to sip on some coffee. Think about life. As Tyler slowly starts to sneak into the fridge. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you gotta have a coffee, sometimes you gotta have a beer as you're sweating over your refried beans, everyone. I feel like everyone should have a disembodied hand in their life that just throws them beers into their existence as they're in the kitchen. If I could patent that, I'd make $1 million, I tell you what. Okay, so let's talk about, I'm just letting this garlic kind of cook down a little bit right now. And you really want that, right? Like you see how kind of the outside is getting some color, you got those little tendrily bits. That's nice. You're going to get kind of like confit stuff. You're going to get some kind of like a bit more raw bits. I like that. Kind of little variants and taste and stuff. So let's talk about our spices. Okay, so we've got obviously our beans. We've got bay leaf. In here I've got paprika, cumin, and oregano in varying amounts. Mostly paprika. If you really like cumin, bump up the cumin. Kind of probably a tablespoon paprika, half a tablespoon each of cumin and oregano. Yeah.
Could you use the Caesar dressing as a mayo in the salad?
Absolutely. It'd be amazing. It'd be great. It's got anchovy in it. And if I love anything with anchovy in it. My brother was making ribs today and he marinated them in fish sauce. It's like could be the best ribs ever. There's anchovies in it. So you absolutely could. It would actually be really nice with if you want to really brighten up, some lemon zest. Ooh, some lemon zest in that coleslaw and some lemon juice. Okay, great. Yeah, so those are kind of the spices, and then I'm going to use onion powder instead of onions. And I'm doing that because all I have is red onions. And red onions with these white beans, when I puree it, is going to look like, no, real rough. So I'm just going to use onion powder. That's why. If I had red beans and red onions, I'd probably chop up some onions right now. Get that sauteing in the fat. Oh, look at this garlic. Look what's going on there. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Ooh, baby. Okay. So now we're going to add all of our spices. And this is some magical stuff that's happening right now. Because paprikas and stuff are untoasted. So we really want to, you can just, whoa. You can really smell this now. We're toasting that cumin. We're toasting that bay leaf. We're toasting that paprika. There's essential oils that live in that dried spice. We're extracting all of that stuff out. And it is absolutely lovely. But you don't want to go too hard because you'll burn it. Cool that off with your beans. Right? Should I put beer in my beans? Zach? That's crazy. Is that crazy? Okay, so look at these beautiful, beautiful little Little things are coated in these nice toasted spices. It's gorgeous. They're happy. Gonna add some chicken stock. And some beer. That's for you, Zach. I don't know if that was a good idea, but I like it. Now we're gonna add some chicken stock. We're gonna open our chicken stock. It's just enough to kind of cover up the beans here, right? That's kind of what we're doing. Yeah, that was beautiful. Look at it. Yeah, perfect. Turn up our heat and bring this up to a boil. And you can see the color of that liquid. Look at that. Just gorgeous. Okay, you can keep filming that for a sec. Okay, yeah. So this is going to come up to a boil, and then we're going to remove that bay leaf, and we're going to pulse it, correct our seasoning, and we should be pretty much good to go. Okay, now we're still half an hour. Oh, onion powder. Okay, sorry. This is a big point. Onion powder doesn't toast well. This is onions. They dehydrate and they blitz up, and it doesn't have oils in it. It's a vegetable that's been dehydrated and then powdered, right? So you want to add this into a liquid. And just total random side note, this is like the really cool thing about Indian cooking, if I can generalize an entire continent's worth of food, and this is something that's totally unique to that area or that continent as far as I know, is they've got untoasted...
Country.
Isn't India a continent? Oh, it's a country. Sorry, India's a country. I thought it was a continent. That's why I make food, guys. That's why I cook for a living. They have toasted spice powders and untoasted spice powders. So when you're making curries, sometimes you add your powders when you're like sauteing your onions, and other times their powders are added after you add your liquid. And in French cooking and Italian cooking, that's like a totally foreign concept. There's no such thing as like a toasted spice powder blend that you would get in like French cooking. I thought that was very interesting. So that's why you add onion powder afterwards. And don't be afraid of onion and garlic powder. It's really useful in like sauces and stews and stuff. Like all it is dehydrated garlic and onions. You know, there's nothing freaky. It's garlic, salt, and onion salt that you want to watch out for. That's that sketchy stuff where it's like they got all these nitrates and all these things put in there. But just onion powder, garlic powder. They have their, like everything, right? Like there's an application for them, and they can be good, they can be bad. Depends on the thing. Alright, well, I'm gonna kind of put that away, see where this is at for this. And again, this is gonna look like one of those things that looks real wet when we start to blitz it, but once the starch from curing these beans is released, it's going to thicken up right away here. And you don't need to cook this for a super long time, right? Because we've toasted the... you want to get up to a boil to make sure those beans are really hot. But the beans are fully cooked, right? The garlic's been toasted, the spices have been toasted. There's nothing in there that hasn't been cooked. So you can go... Once it's back up to temp, you can pretty much start blending it right away. But then you can leave it simmering on the stove. Like if you're having people over, you want to keep it warm, get in a little pot, put a little lid on it, cook it off the back low heat. It'll be fine, like simmering down all day. But yeah. So we've got, with this new YouTube format, guys, we can start doing some cooler stuff in terms of editing. So think about some recipes that you guys like, maybe are like ribs. Ribs are now on the docket because, you know, that 3-hour process, we can now edit down to a nice little 20-minute, half-hour video for you guys. I was thinking about doing some braised meat, some like short ribs or something like that, or a pot roast chicken, even some stuff that takes a couple days if you want to talk about like doing some light fermentations or bread. So if you guys have anything you want me to do that kind of is that longer process, I know my dad is going to say bread because he's been telling me to do a bread series for a month now. So, Carl, coming at you. Carl is my dad. think about that. Send in the request. Let's get going with that. Oh my god, what a disaster. Stir your pot with a spoon. Don't swirl it like a lunatic. Okay, so our beans are bubbling here. They're happy little beanies. I'm going to remove this bay leaf, because bay leaf is actually not really digestible by people. Like, the flavor is super nice, but it's not really a thing that you can eat. I'm going to get in my little hand blender here. You guys could just mush this with like a potato smasher. I wouldn't put it in a blender. Like, it gets so thick and gummy, you'll just spend like all day cleaning it out. Like, not that it won't work, it's just like, it would be a nightmare to clean your blender out after that, I think. These things are great. Like, they're not super expensive, and if you guys have watched all these episodes, you're clearly into cooking, so. Gotta say, color, nicer on the red kidney beans. This is a wee bit orangey. Okay. So this is still really thin. These are going to cook down for a little bit longer, and they'll thicken up a little bit as some of that chicken stock reduces. Careful, this is the heat of 1,000 suns. Just going to give them a little test for seasoning here. Oh, so good though. Touch of salt, a little bit. But like, it's the depth of flavor on this. It's just crazy. You got that like umami of like that pork fat, smokiness, that paprika, the deep cumin, you know? And then the beans themselves are cooked out. They're kind of this, like, I keep them a little chunky. You can puree them fine. I've heard some people actually pass them through a sieve to get rid of the skins, you know? But to me, this, like, base of some nachos, put some nacho chips on top of them with some cheese, a little sour cream. Ooh, maybe in a burrito. Gosh, just as a dip for chips. I'm super happy with that. So this is going to reduce a little longer. You guys don't need to watch it reduce. Bring it down to your consistency there. So yeah, guys. I'm not really going to plate this because these are just some side dishes. So, I mean, I don't know. Want to put this in a bowl? Is that useful? Yeah, I'm not going to. You don't need to see that. Coleslaw. Put it in a bowl on a table at a picnic. Put it on a table after you barbecue up some burgers. Make some smash burgers. I heard there's a great recipe on YouTube. If you go follow Chase Rose on YouTube, there's a great smash burger recipe. You know, want to make some fried chicken? I think that guy also has a fried chicken recipe. Make some refried beans. Delicious. Make some coleslaw. You know, if you want, put some of this in a jar and you'll have sauerkraut. Let me know how that goes. So, thanks for tuning in. If you're cooking along and making the recipes, be sure to tag me, Chase Rose. # cooking with Chase. Stay home. Stay safe. Eat well. And we will see you on Monday on YouTube at 5 o'clock for our first live premiere. Have a good one, guys.